State your name, your affiliation or organization, and the country you are listening, you are participating in this webinar from. Thank you so much. So welcome to this webinar. This is our third webinar under the stream Transboundary Wetland Management. And I will be your host in this webinar. My name is Leonard Akwan. This webinar is under the title Special Focus Seminar. We are focusing on South Sudan and specifically Sudd Wetland. And the lead question that we'll be struggling to respond to through this webinar is South Sudan prepared to face future Sudd and natural resources related trade-offs for development pathways and options? I'm also assisted in this webinar by Juan Carlos, who is my colleague from GIZ, and also Azeb Masha, who is from the Nile Basin Initiative. This webinar is also co-convened by the Ministry of Irrigation and Water Resources, South Sudan. So for the opening remark and the keynote session, we'll have two presenters. We will have the first presenter, Juan Carlos, working with GIZ and also working in South Sudan with regards to its wetlands conservation and planning. And then, of course, we will have Paul Dimitri, who will also give us an opening remarks and an introduction. Paul Dimitri is the Deputy Director for Biodiversity, Government of South Sudan, and is also the focal point for CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity. Then we'll have three series of presentation from Hydroc. Hydroc is working with Nile Basin Initiative and GIZ in South Sudan, mapping the wetlands of South Sudan, including Sudd, developing models for the wetlands, and of course also undertaking measurement of environmental flows. So we'll have three series of presentation from Hydroc, led by Dr. Joe Peterson, Dr. Jens Kiesel, for those series of presentation. And then finally, we'll have a presentation from Paul Dimitri on what they're doing in collaboration with Nile Basin Initiative, Hydroc, and GIZ with regards to Sudd Action Plan. And then, of course, finally, Sadiq Lothar will give us a wrap-up and key messages from this webinar. So Phil, most welcome. And without wasting much time, I will take this opportunity to welcome Juan Carlos from GIZ. Please, Carlos.
Yes, colleagues, how are you? Warm welcome, wherever you are hearing us today, whether in the Nile Basin or beyond. Good afternoon to all of you. It is a real pleasure to be in this webinar with you today. Actually, the third one in a series of events that they have taken us or is taking us through this wetland and environment journey, and on which we have already touched upon key issues of transboundary management plans. And yesterday we had a great session on peatlands and climate change. And today's topic is also one that is very, very dear to us working here in the region, which is the Sudd and the special focus on South Sudan. Under the Nile Basin Initiative, GIZ partnership, we are working on transboundary wetlands management, and as the keywords there tells us, we have been focusing on transboundary landscapes. However, we have also taken a broad understanding of this transboundary And we don't only work on landscapes or ecosystems that might be shared by more than two countries. We also work and focus on those ones that might have transboundary significance. And that's where the Sudd and the work that we have been doing jointly with the colleagues from South Sudan and from the different centers of the Nile Basin Initiative comes into play. I think it's very well known for all of us that the Sudd is one of the biggest wetlands in Africa, actually one of the biggest wetlands in the world. And as we have been hearing about the importance and the relevance of wetlands, this one is not the exception. The Sudd provides key ecosystem services for the countries upstream and downstream of the region, and not only those types of regulatory services, but also provisioning services. It provides and it sustains thousands of livelihoods within South Sudan. So we are in front of us within a complex ecosystem that that also it's very key for its biodiversity, for its habitat services that it provides for biodiversity and for nature. And at the same time, we have even heard from yesterday's experts on the topic of peatlands and climate change that half of the peatlands from the Nile Basin are actually found in the Sudd. This is just to give a short overview of how important and how critical this landscape is for the Nile Basin countries and for the Nile Basin Initiative. Now, from our trench, from our desk, we have been focusing on what is developing knowledge and better understanding of the different elements and the different aspects that are critical for managing this wetland. You will hear different presentations from different colleagues on the different technical issues that we have been focusing on, including the modeling, including the baseline studies, to understand where we're standing right now in terms of ecosystem services, in terms of biodiversity, and of course to understand what are the major threats and pressures that are affecting or that might affect the development options of the Sudd. So the objective at the end of the day is, of course, to work hand in hand with the colleagues from the South Sudanese government in order for them to be able to take the best decision possible and to make the necessary arrangements to decide what are the development paths and the development options that best suits the South Sudanese government. So for us, it's a contribution to making sure that decisions are based on science, based on facts, and based on knowledge. Now, in terms of process, we have been working with a strong base of stakeholders from South Sudan, most of them coming from the different ministries, and I hope that the different colleagues will also have a chance to talk about this one. We call it the South Sudan Wetlands Working Group. And this is the platform that we have been using also to validate and to consult and to ensure that the different ministries, the different relevant stakeholders, they move at the same speed and that they give the relevant inputs in order for this knowledge creation, for this set of studies and inputs for management of the Sudd are done in the best way and of course in a participatory manner, ensuring that all relevant ministries and all relevant actors are well represented. Unfortunately, as it's very well known by everyone in in this webinar, almost in this planet, of course. We have been hit through and during the process by the global pandemic. So several of these interactions, which were supposed to happen in a physical format, now we have had the challenge to change them to a virtual format, which has slowed down a little bit the process, but not the willingness to continue working, and of course not the final results, which we for sure will succeed in ensuring that that at the end of the day we manage to get to the products and to the deliverables and to the results that we wanted to achieve from the beginning. So I think that with that, I would like to close these opening remarks just by thanking, of course, our donor, the Ministry of Environment of Germany, through its climate change initiative, IKI, who are the ones that have made this work in South Sudan possible, and also the work that we are spearheading from the Nile Basin Initiative on transboundary wetlands. Thank you very much, colleagues, and I would like to give Leonard back the floor, not without wishing you all a very successful webinar. Thank you so much, Leo.
Thank you so much, Juan Carlos. I will take this opportunity now to invite Paul Dimitri, who will also give his welcome remark. And then, of course, we'll present later again. But of course, for now, he will give his welcome remark and set the page for the wetlands.
Okay.
Welcome, Paul.
The volume, because there was no, I tried there, but the Wi-Fi is not catching at all. Yes.
Thank you very much, Leonard.
Yes, welcome, Paul.
Coming, and also thank you very much, Juan Carlos, for the opening remarks. As you have heard, I'm Paul Ladu Dimitri, Deputy Director for Biodiversity in the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and also a member of the Regional Wetland Working Group for this purpose. And I'm stepping in for my colleague from the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation of South Sudan, that is Mr. Thomas Jank, for this particular welcoming remark and also a short presentation introduction. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity to speak on behalf of the two ministries representing the country in this particular seminar, the online seminar. We are very happy with the support that is coming through NBI and the consultants that are coming on board through in the development of the activities that we are going to do in the Sud. As you have heard, that we are trying to see how is South Sudan prepared in terms of the development pathways that are coming in the near future. And that will not be possible without having in place the most important issues, that is knowledge based. So all our developments, whether in water resources, hydrology, wetlands management, wise use of wetland resources, it has to be backed up by information. So without further ado, I'll just go directly to the presentation and share with you what we have in the introduction part of this particular presentation. I also couple as an adjunct lecturer in the University of Juba in the Department of Environmental Studies at the moment. Next. So I will be taking you through the introduction. South Sudan wetlands, looking at the country as a whole, the country is blessed with a lot of resources, especially the wetland resources. And a part of these wetland resources that are very known to us and known globally in the region are the Sudd wetlands and then the Machar masses. So some of the features that we see within the Sudd wetland, it is one of the registered Ramsar site for South Sudan up to now. And it was done when the country was won since 2006. So it's registered under the list of Ramsar site. And some of the features is that it encompasses 3 protected areas. We have the Shambe National Park, we have Fanyika Game Reserve, and then we have the Ziraf Game Reserve. So if you look at this wetland, it has a lot of resources in terms of the biodiversity resources. The second wetland that is also of importance to us as a country is the Machar Marshes, which is also very important, but there is little known in terms of its resources and the knowledge base. So regionally, what does this wetland contribute? It contributes to the hydrology of the River Nile and also the regional climate of this particular region. So in terms of hydrology and the climate, it plays a lot of roles. Nationally, it has a lot of critical biodiversity resources, looking at it from the ecosystems perspective, the genetic resources, and the species resources. So it has a huge amount of resources in that particular area. It also contributes to livelihoods, especially of the communities that are living around those areas. Looking at the map of South Sudan, we have 10 states. Out of these 10 states, almost 5 states falls within the wetland itself. So you can imagine the livelihoods of activities of the inhabitants living around that area and how is it connected to that Sudd wetland. In terms of water supply, it also contributes a lot. And then the fisheries and other aquatic resources. The local microclimate within the South Sudan itself, or within the 5 states that are surrounding that particular resources. And then the nomadic lifestyle of the people. And that one is actually connected to the dry land grazing areas, which are called the touch in most of the literature. So you find that most of these inhabitants or the nomadic tribes move with the expansion and the recession of the wetland. So each and every time they go to the touch, and then especially during the dry season, and then when it starts expanding the waters, then they go back into the highlands. Next. All right, after having all the good resources that we have in the country, in this particular wetland, which is the Sudd wetland, there are also challenges that are facing this particular wetland. And I've highlighted a number of these challenges. One of them is the encroachment. And this encroachment is from the overgrazing. You have seen the amount of kettles and the amount of kettles that we're having in the country, especially around the Sudd. These particular kettles, with their movement on this nomadic lifestyle, they have a huge impact in terms of the wetland itself, because they keep on encroaching, especially the riparian areas of the wetland itself. And then also there is farming, which is not in huge forms, but most of it are already encroaching most of these wetlands, because people think these wetlands are wastelands. And nobody will go ask you there when you start doing your own farming closer to those particular areas. The second threat or challenge that we are looking at is also the extractive industries. There are huge industries that are within the Sudd wetland, specifically the oil and gas industry. Most of the oil wells and the oil blocks falls within the Sudd wetland, especially the block B. It is deep inside the Sudd wetland, and most of the activities at the moment is not that sustainable in terms of environmental perspective. So this is one challenge. And then also the issues of climate change, which is a global issue. And if you go to most of these areas around the Sudd wetland, you can even listen to the inhabitants. They will tell you about what is happening in terms of the expansions or the recession of the Sudd wetland itself. They will tell you, one time we were doing grazing here during the dry season, but now we no longer go there. So we moved to another grazing area. But then this one also brings a lot of natural resource-based conflict, because people know for the last 10 or 15 years they have been grazing here. So the other community now, when they don't have fodder on their sites, now they move to the other side. Now this one causes a lot of problems. So in terms of climate change, it's happening, but it is a challenge and also an opportunity at the same time, because it can also help in terms of mitigation and adaptation. The other challenge is the Jonglei Canal, which was dug partially. If you go along the routes from Bor to Jale, Mar to Panyagor, you will see the semi-structure which was started in the 80s. But if this canal is to be resumed, then we need to also look at the impacts in terms of the socioeconomic, in terms of hydrology, in terms of the environmental. So these are some of the challenges that are there. We also look at the limited funding from the national budget of the institution or from the government. At the moment, the institutions that are mandated to manage these resources are not adequately funded. So you can imagine, with the little resources that they have, what is it that they can do? And then there's also inadequate knowledge base. There are a lot of resources within this wetland, but unless researches are done, there are so many researches which were done, but then they are not in depth. So for instance, looking at the biodiversity aspect, we still need to do a lot of resources. Most of the biodiversity information are on the above ground or the terrestrial, but then in terms of the aquatic biodiversity, there's little information which are known there. And then there's also inadequate capacity in terms of the personnel, people who understand what a wetland is, what a peatland is, what are the resources that we have, and how do we manage a wetland, So this one is still a challenge. And then also the frequent civil instability in the country that has been ongoing, but we are happy that this is changing for the better because of the current peace agreement that we had. Things are getting into normalcy. So these are some of the challenges that are there within these wetlands. Next. Okay, now looking at the ongoing work which are supported by the Nile Basin Initiative, there are a number of initiatives that are already ongoing, and one of them is the Nile Basin Wetlands Baseline Study to look at the Sudd Diagnostic Analysis Study, to look at the eco-hydrological study, look at the Sudd Option Study, and then the Sudd Wetland Management Study. So this is ongoing at the moment through the help of MBI and the consultants. And there is also the Mashar Masses Eco-Hydrology Study, which focuses on in-depth assessment of the hydrology, the ecology, the biodiversity, socioeconomics of Mashar Masses, to lay the foundation for strategic planning. Because without this information, it will be very difficult to develop a strategic plan for that particular wetland. And there's also the Nile Basin Wetlands, the TIP, which is called the Economics of Ecosystems and Biodiversity. So meaning what is the value of that particular ecosystems in terms of the services that it is providing. So this study is also ongoing for the Sudd and the Mashar Masses. This is already done. And there's also the Nile Basin Wetland or the peatlands carbon study, which is also done, looking at the carbon stock that we have in the wetland, in the Sudd wetland, in terms of the peatlands, and how will that contribute to the climate change efforts that the country or the globe or the region is trying to look at in terms of mitigation and adaptation. And we are very happy that the results of this study will be taken care of and then included in the ongoing discussions on the national determined contributions of South Sudan and its contribution to adaptation and mitigation of climate change. So with this, I would like to welcome all of you to this special webinar focusing on South Sudan wetlands and the Sudd wetlands in particular. So welcome all of you, and thank you very much, Leonard.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul Dimitri, for your welcoming remarks and setting the pace for what is happening with these great wetlands in South Sudan. Now, let me take this opportunity to welcome Georg Peterson for the presentations on the studies that we are doing in Sudd wetlands in South Sudan. Georg, please welcome.
All right. Hello, everybody. You can hear me, yeah? You can hear me well?
Can you loud and clear?
All right, great. So let me share my screen. So you should be able to see this now. Please confirm you see the screen.
Yes, just click it on the bigger screen. The view. Yeah, good.
All right. Good. We are having 3 presentations today. Myself, then my colleague Jens, and then my colleague Gordon will be presenting on the work that we have done in the overall Nile Basin, but with a specific focus on the wetlands. Reporting on the physical baseline studies that we've done, reporting on the Sudd Wetland modeling that we've done, and on the Sudd-E works that we have done. So in this first presentation here now, we will start with the baseline studies. The work was done in the context of this study with a very long name, Nile Basin Wetlands of Transboundary Significance, Inventory, Baseline Study, and Framework Management Plan with a nested case study in the Sudd. This includes quite a lot of aspects: wetland mapping, a wetland inventory, modeling wetland hydraulics, wetland ecosystem services assessment, wetland biodiversity assessment, wetland e-flow assessment, wetland management policies, and wetland framework management plan. Basically all geared towards generating knowledge, which can then later on be used for educated decision making in the basin and also in the Sudd in particular. As mentioned, all these aspects, all these work packages that we have been looking at, they've been done on a basin-wide scale, as well as in more detail on the scale of the Sudd wetlands. With regards to the physical baseline, this mainly comprises 2 aspects: wetland mapping, which is based on the evaluation of remote sensing data, resulting in different land cover classes, and the wetland inventory. In the wetland inventory, we've basically structured and prepared an overview of the wetlands in the Nile Basin and created a wetland knowledge database where information from literature, so existing knowledge, as well as also knowledge that we have created has been fed into. With regards to the wetland mapping, the objective here was to provide high quality land cover and land use information for the Nile Basin. There has been a previous study in 2009 in which we've also been involved, where this has been done. But here in the current study, we have significantly increased on the resolution. So we have now 10 meter spatial resolution for the entire Nile Basin, of course, also for the Sudd. We have separated different vegetation classes. So we have now not only vegetated or non-vegetated or water areas, but we also have differentiation between where do we have reeds, where do we have papyruses and flooded grasslands. We've mapped this for 3 different epochs, 1985, 2005, and 2015, with the idea to look into change analysis. I'll come to that a bit later. What the further requirements were is that the data we produce is ready for GIS integration. So it is available in GIS readable layers, that we do a rigorous validation of the final product, that the objective that we have utilized is transparent and objective of the methodology that we've utilized, so that it can be repeated at some later stage and bring comparable results that again can be used for looking into trend aspects. And of course, the methodology needed to be cost effective so that it can be repeated. The method that we have applied for the mapping basically utilizes Landsat 5, Landsat 7, and Sentinel-2 data, as mentioned, for the different timestamps of 85 2005 and 2015. Overall, for the entire basin now, 25,000 satellite images have been analyzed, which in total is about 14 billion data pixels for each spectral band that we used for each season and each year. We've heavily used ground control points, as you see here. For example, this is a close-up in the Sudd near Padak or Baidit. And basically what we've done, we've taken ground control points where we identified what kind of vegetation do we have present there, and used this for machine learning and then for application on a spatial scale. The results give us a land cover mapping in 10-meter resolution for the entire Nile Basin. We have mapped different land cover classes as seen here. And we've also, of course, looked into the accuracy that has been achieved. We see quite a good accuracy for most of the classes, while we do have challenges in others. So, for example, water is quite well mapped, while other classes there is a bit of an issue with regards to seasonal differences, with regards to vegetation health. So that means, for example, the papyrus that is located in some saturated water has a different color as compared to a papyrus that is located in an area where flooding has just receded and the water availability is less. There are also aspects like sunlight, depending on when the satellite image has been taken, that play a role here. But overall, we could very well distinguish the different classes of wetland vegetation. Based on this, we can do a trend analysis. Here an example for Lake Victoria, where this is very well visible, but also aspects in the Sudd Wetlands, where we have here the different vegetation classes, and we can zoom in. So we very nicely see the different vegetation here. We have blue for the water, red is papyrus, yellow is reed areas, the light blue is wetland grasses, so on the Teutsch area. And for example, we see the channels here, where we have the permanent flowing Nile waters. And what we can also see over time is how, for example, these channels are changing. So these data sets will be very interesting, for example, also for navigation purposes, for all sorts of planning purposes, where it is important to understand the dynamics of the system. So all this data basically is now available and can be utilized for further studies. We then come to the wetland inventory. Here the objectives were to provide a knowledge database for an ecosystem approach to sustainable management of wetlands and transboundary relevance in the Nile Basin, as a base for educated decision making. We have set this up for all the wetlands, or for the larger wetlands in the Nile Basin, again with a specific focus on the Sudd. We've used the Ramsar approach for definitions, basically giving us a sound background in the methodology and in the structuring that we have used. There's quite some experience out there in this regard, so it's a well replicable approach, and it gives us a high level of detail with regards to the aspects, the parameters, and the information that we have in the inventory. So as a result, we have an overall database structure that gives subbasins, the wetland names, wetland groups, in which country, in which on which river it's located, and the central coordinates. And then from there, we have gone into finer detail, providing detailed information. Overall, quite a number, or 68 wetlands have been inventoried in this regard. There are transboundary wetlands in between there, the Sudd being one of them. The Ramsar sites are in there, Sudd again being one of them, and important bird areas, again, the Sudd being one of them. The inventory database includes the subbasin number, the name, the wetland it belongs to. So quite a number of parameters for the definition of the wetland. So including aspects like nearest towns and so on, so it can be related spatially. And then we have aspects like physical features, geomorphology and soils, climate, hydrology, water quality, biodiversity. So a variety of aspects that are important for describing the situation and conditions in the wetland. This, of course, is changing from wetland to wetland. So there were some where we have more data available, some where we have less information available. So, for example, the Sudd is relatively well studied, while, for example, for the Machar marshes, there's already less information, or for the Ghazal system, there's already less information. We've created a literature database that has been utilized, but also which is available for more detailed reviews, and which is part of the inventory. As an example, for the Sudd, for the individual wetlands, the heading starts with the wetland name, the country it's located in, central coordinates, its altitude range, the area, then the nearest towns, international importance, Ramsar site, important bird area. So aspects that are included on top level. And we then have the descriptions, land use and land cover. So aspects including of what I've shown you before with regards to the land cover mapping, as well as also what you will see in the presentation that Jens will provide and Gordon will provide, did feed into this inventory. So as an example here, physical features of the Sudd, general description of the wetland area is included, a chapter on the hydrology, that states like the basin or significant year-to-year variation, evapotranspiration. So different aspects of important to understand the situation as well as the processes in the wetlands are included here. The hydrology, so here we have descriptions on how it is connected with the upstream area and dependent on changing water levels, for example, in the Lake Victoria, Lake Kyoga, and the other equatorial lakes, including the discharge that comes from Lake Victoria. Also aspects like very basic and general, but very important understanding aspects with regards to the hydrology, that half of the inflowing water evaporates. So if you compare inflow and outflow, there's quite a difference. Also important to understand, where does the water move inside the Sudd system? Yeah, so we have about 7% of the flows flowing through the swamps and lagoons, while the majority of the flows through the network of the canals. So that's important to understand when we look into modeling aspects, when we want to look into water balances and so on. With regards to classification, we've used the Ramsar classification here. It's an inland wetland. We've used the typology provided by Ramsar to provide basically the indicators or the classification aspects, so that also certain comparisons can be made in that regard. With regards to management status, here we have in the Sudd a situation where we have different national parks and game reserves established. So this kind of management status has been recorded, so that also over time, when things are changing in South Sudan, this can be updated and also provides a background for planning aspects. With regards to the land cover, this is a result basically of the mapping that we have done. So here, as an example, for 1985 and 2015, with the classes visible of water, papyrus, wetland grasses, and reeds. So we see here the land cover area. So we see that between 1985 and 2015, we have mapped more water. The papyrus area has decreased in the favor of wetland grasses and also in the favor of reeds. Those areas have increased. These numbers have to be taken with some caution because what needs to be understood, of course, is that the mapping from 1985 has been based on Landsat data, while the 2015 mapping has been based on Sentinel data. So there is some difference in the sensors that are being used. So it is not really one-to-one comparable. So certain care has to be taken, for example, when doing trend analysis. So if we look into the numbers here, we have a change of 51% in water, minus 63% papyrus, quite a change, an increase in wetland grasses and reeds. This is, as said, we have to consider that different sensors have been used, but for the Sudd, this is also very, very dependent on the hydrological regime, which can change very, very much over time. So when we go into the modeling presentation that Jens will show, yeah, there we will see on how we modeled the wetlands and how the dynamics are within the year, but also in between different years with regards to the wetland extent, and that also has then an impact on the distribution of species. We've looked basically what is the available data. We have utilized the different available literature plus the data that we have generated ourselves. The structure for the inventory is basically designed for periodic updating. This has to be very well understood that the inventory is not a one-stop shop where we have created a final product. It is final with regards to its structure and with regards to the available information that is there at the current stage. But even with now other studies ongoing, there will be additional knowledge which can and should be fed into the inventory to keep it up to date. So it's a live document or a live database that ideally should be maintained and updated over time. So it always has kind of the state-of-the-art knowledge of the wetlands. And here, for example, whoever is dealing with the Sudd should make sure that this is being updated and fed, and information is fed into the inventory. We have seen that coverage is quite heterogeneous. So, for example, if we take South Sudan, or even if we take different areas of the Sudd wetlands, there are some parts, let's say specifically in the southern part, which are better understood, and other areas like in the north, which are, let's say, more difficult to access. There is less information available. So there are data gaps that hopefully get closed over time, but there's a significant amount of information already included in the inventory. What we recommend is that future updates should be scheduled or structured in a way so that countries, that different stakeholders coordinate with NBI to feed information into the inventory. And for example, if we have different ministries, different stakeholders in the Sudd wetlands, but also contribute to its maintenance. So that as a quick overview. Thank you very much. Leonard, I'm not sure how we want to go about questions, if that's planned directly after or if you first go through other presentations. Over to you, Leonard.
Thank you so much, Jörg, for that presentation on the baseline studies of the Sudd Wetland and in a broader way, the wetlands of the Nile Basin. I think, the way forward is that we will have the two presentations from Jens and from Gordon. In the meantime, there are questions which have been asked under Q&A. So please, you can try and answer them. And of course, there are also some questions under the chat. For our listeners, kindly share your questions under the Q&A. We will try as much as possible to answer them. If the Q&A option is not active for your case, then you can post your questions under the chat. Now, may I take this opportunity to welcome Jens for his presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Georg, I think you need to stop sharing, otherwise I can't start sharing my